Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Event Industry News podcast. Today, this is a bit indulgent for me because I'm joined by a very close, good industry friend, Craig Mathie, founder and director of Project 30. We're going to be talking today with Craig a little bit about rethinking events for a healthier industry and a little bit about his own personal journey in the sector and what led him to launch Project 30 and what that means for the events industry as well. So, Craig, thank you very much for giving me some of your time. I know you're a very busy man at the moment, mate, scaling up, especially at this time of year, considering all the events that you're working on. So thank you very much for giving me some time here. But for the listeners who may not be familiar with yourself or Project 30, could you give us that little elevator pitch of who you are, how you got started, and a little bit about Project 30 as well?
Yeah, of course I will. Firstly, thank you for having me. Thank you for the very kind words. Really lovely to be here. I'm not very good at elevator pitches. I talk too much, but I will do my best to keep it tight and condensed. So yeah, I've been working in the events industry for 15 years and launched Project 30 2 years ago, and I'm sure we'll go on to kind of talk about how that happened and how it came about. But in short, we're a full service event production agency. So we specialize in taking events from concept to completion. So from a piece of paper and then into the field. We deliver all different parts of live events management, production, procurement, marketing, sales advice, all these kind of different pieces. As anyone that listens to your podcast will know, an awful lot goes into delivering events. So we can do lots of that from start to finish. We can also do small parts of it, and we're very proud to do that for a range of clients from small community events all the way through to, fortunately, working for some of the biggest brands on some of the biggest shows in the world. So really proud to do that, and absolutely loving the journey. As you said, right in the mix of a busy summer season at the moment, but yeah, managed to find some desk time and really happy to be here to chat through. Chat through things.
Craig's being very humble here about some of the events that him and his team work on. He's not mentioning any names, and I won't put him in any difficult situations by mentioning those names as well. But I would certainly go and check out Project 30 on Instagram and Craig's profile on LinkedIn. They are posting some of the pictures of some of the sites and the events and the activations and things that they work on, and they are some of the biggest names in the industry, but also some of the smaller, more intimate events and things like that as well, which I think is the great part of Project 30. You can work with anybody and everybody. Well, that's enough about pitching for you and Project 30. But after 11 years at Bournemouth Sevens, mate, which I'm going to say at that point, after 11 years, very comfortable role. You know how the show works. You know how the festival works. You know it inside out. Why the hell do you decide to launch your own business and start from scratch?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as you said, 11 amazing years at Bournemouth Sevens. I reflect so positively on the time that I was there. Dodge and Fleur, who own and run that business, gave me a whole load of respect, opportunity throughout my journey there. So I do nothing but reflect positively on it. And I actually said to Dodge not too long ago, it was almost the perfect training for an entrepreneur in waiting. So and that was really lovely. I spent the best part of a decade running someone else's business, and I learned a huge amount from that. And every day in what I'm doing now, I realized that actually it was such a good place to learn about so many parts of the sector. But I just wanted something a bit different, and I think having done over a decade, and I was probably ready to leave a little bit before I did, but then COVID came, and it became very much about surviving the dreaded C word. And I remember I was doing a podcast during that period. It was just so much uncertainty for the sector as a whole. And yeah, it was about getting through that. And we delivered our biggest ever show in 2021, 42 days after being given permission to do so. And then I did one more, and at that point I was kind of ready, and I'd had long held the ambition of launching my own business, and Project 30 was that, and I'll talk a little bit about how that kind of came to be in a second. But there's just that kind of, I guess, that flicker in the back of your mind that you want some ownership, and you want to be able to take a business in particular directions and make calls that are ultimately yours, for good or for bad. And I think, when I think about what we've achieved with Project 30 over the last couple of years, I'm blown away by it, and I love it, and I love going to work every day. Honestly, I thought I worked hard before, but I'm working harder than I've ever worked before. But it feels like every day is fun and exciting. Almost every day. I'm not going to say every day because that's not true, but almost every day is truly exciting. And like being able to fulfil that dream. And what's been really lovely is I think we've done it in the right way. So we're able to count Bournemouth Sevens as our first client. We have worked in that field every year since 2011. So that's been a real joy as well. So kind of pushing on and working with a range of other clients, as you said, to get to go to Glastonbury, to work for Vodafone, to work on London Marathon. Like what a privilege. Like the UK is the absolute global lead in large scale events, in my opinion, and being able to work on some of those in pretty important roles and pretty crucial roles is really, really, really positive for us as well.
Absolutely, mate. And I think all of those events now that you work on will be richer for all of that decade plus of experience that you had on B7s. And I think, from us meeting early on, I certainly could tell that you had all of the skill set and acumen and ability and desire and drive to be able to run a business on your own. So it's great to see that you're doing that now and drive it in your own way as well. Because I think looking into some of your mission statements and chats that we've had, Project 30 seems to be very much centered around kind of like changing the way our industry values itself and its people. And I think that kind of nicely brings me on to that next question is, like, what are you doing differently at Project 30? And not to point the finger at anybody else in that if they are doing it this particular way, that is the wrong way, because everybody's got different ways of working, and especially in the events industry, there's no one size fits all. But what is it that you set out with those core values very early on with Project 30 that you wanted to build the team around and the kind of the culture around of Project 30?
Yeah, I think like the first thing for me to say probably on that, it isn't me, it is we. I was probably at the forefront of the launch of Project 30 a couple of years ago. But more recently, Paul, who's kind of co-founded the business with me and then sat in the background for a few years, kind of came over properly in January.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, Adam. Like, I genuinely think running a business in partnership is a privilege, and being able to share that risk, share those conversations, go through tough days together, but celebrate wins together as well, I think is really, really important. And both Paul and I, I think, feel the same. And we're interestingly, we're similar in lots of ways, but very different in lots of ways as well. And I think you need that in order to be a successful partnership. And I think that really is probably one of the core bits of that sets us out, is that we share views on how we want our business to run and grow, and be values orientated and do things in the right way and treat people in the way that we want to be treated. Fundamentally, kindness and caring, I think are the core to my personal values as an individual, and that's what I try and bring to the work that we do as well. Is working with people and for people in the right way, not driving too hard, not expecting too much for too little. I think the events industry of old was very guilty of that, and there's so many studies out there that talk about how stressful our industry is to work in, and lots of people listening will know that. But I think there are slightly different ways to do things, and they come down to, I guess, what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. But I wouldn't want this to in any way, whenever I talk about Project 30 and how we're trying to do things, be preachy, because there are times where we're working super hard at working hours that really don't lend themselves to time at home or seeing family and friends, and like we haven't broken the mold so ridiculously that it's easy. It's just trying to stay true to our values as we go through and as we push forward. Like Project 30 was a project that was born out of like the name came from a really difficult period in my life where I was dealing with my sexuality, and I've told this story plenty of times before in other conversations, so I won't revisit it. But the fifth strand of that project was delivering this event, delivering this business and coming up with something new, and that's why it's called Project 30. Interestingly, the bit we've not really talked about very much is we set it up when Paul was 30, so there's a really kind of nice tie-in.
Right. I didn't know that.
Our icon is two pyramids, two mountains, sorry, and purposefully because there's two of us doing this thing together. So like the friendship that we have between us is kind of sat at the core of what we're able to deliver. I spend much more time talking about it than he does, because probably because he likes to hide in the background and be like tragically efficient that way, and I just like to sound my own voice. That's what my husband tells me anyway.
Similar to my business partner relationship, mate. It's literally exactly the same.
Yeah, and I think it's important, right? I think like doing these things together, like bringing different skill sets to the table, is just really important. And I think we'll always try and do that and approach that. And it's nice to have a sounding board as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that are listening and are watching this in back, before we hit record, Paul's very much just in the background there as well at that moment in time, walking through the office.
He's also got more of a face for TV than I have, so we probably should be rolling him out a bit more often. So
well, I hope you're kind of carrying some of that through, because you tentatively said at the beginning that you've never worked so much in your life now that you're running your own business, and for very different reasons. And obviously that doing that myself, you know, it doesn't sometimes feel like you're working 10 plus hours a day, because you're so passionate about what you're doing and you love to do it and stuff like that. But I guess that brings me on to maybe I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, because I think we need these conversations need to have difficult conversations put around them, so that because other people will be in these positions or dealing with these things or seeing these things and stuff like that. And I think, you know, you already kind of touched on it, that it's hopefully changing now, but there was some kind of the events industry of old, the way that we worked and stuff like that, or the way that people were driven to work was kind of not culturally or good for people. But what are some of those like behaviors and things that maybe even exist now that you think we need to be challenging or dismantling as part of the events industry?
Yeah, I think I reflect a little bit on, and I'm sorry to talk about COVID again, but like I reflect a little bit on that kind of time where we were all out of work and a little bit uncertain around what our future would look like. And I saw loads of commentary, people from all sectors of the events industry, right from the top all the way down to the bottom, talking about how things should be done differently, and how as an industry we asked too much of our people, we didn't look after ourselves, and there was this kind of man up approach of actually boasting about 42 21-hour days in a row and the fact that you've not sleep and all those kind of things, like that was commonplace. I think the reality is we spent loads of time saying it should change, then the green light came on and we all pretty much fell into doing the same thing again. Like the events industry has a real habit, in my opinion, of dealing with the urgent rather than the important. And because the nature of what we do is always deadline focused, we're always pushing to the next deadline. It's so easy to let those kind of morals and those expectations drop away. So I think the industry has changed in some ways, and there are lots of people shining a light on some of the challenges that we have, and they kind of broadly fall into like a couple of brackets for me: the planet and people, and we need to do a better job of looking after both, and that people thing comes down to like we lost so many good people during COVID, like from the sector, people that went and found other careers, people that just thought, I don't need this anymore. And then as a result, struggled with a real kind of skills gap that probably isn't solved yet. Is certainly on the way to being solved. But I think like the reality is we work incredibly hard to deliver against tight timescales and often tight budgets, and those things haven't shifted a huge amount. But I do see that things are changing slightly. There are great organisations doing great work out there, the Nowies of this world, who I know you know, who are talking about representation. There's work happening in DEI continuously around the diversity of our audience, and there are panel sessions happening at events and conferences shining a light on all of these things. And I think from what I can work out, the tone of conversation has changed in the ownership bracket of the events industry. People at the kind of top of agencies, the top of organizations are shifting a little bit. There are moves happening where production agencies will limit staff to 12-hour days, which feels wild to say that's the but that is happening day to day, and these conversations are kind of progressing. So I think we are, as an industry, getting better at looking after people and planet. I think those things have to be driven by us internally. And the reality probably of the events industry is it is pretty it's made up a lot of small organizations. There are some big outliers out there, but we can only really look after our small ourselves as a starting place, and then push forward. I don't know if you've ever come across Ben, who was one of Proud Events owners, and I've seen him do some great conversations and talks about diversity in the workplace. And he said we have to start by looking at ourselves, and then going, okay, well, how can we develop and grow? And it's something that we've been mindful of as a small organisation. There's only 3 of us, but we're acutely aware at the moment of 3 white men doing a job. So our next hire is kind of going in a different direction. We've got a female member of staff starting with us soon, and just kind of constantly thinking about how do our organisations reflect what we want to be and what values we want to have, that we think our organisation should have, and then also what we think our sector should have, and then from that what industry as a whole should have. So yeah, a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think we've come some way in the direction of where we need to get to, but probably not quite as far as we think we should have done. And I think we need to be honest about that. I don't think we can dress our achievements up as something they aren't.
I don't think any of it is a destination, though, is it? It's an ongoing conversation. There's always room to improve or change things for a more positive way, because that's the way that the world works. We're faced with different challenges and different things as a human race. So to think that we can get to a point and draw a line under it and go, well, we've done everything that we possibly can.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's crack on. It wouldn't work that way. You mentioned Nowie as an organisation, and you mentioned Ben. And it sounds to me like this, choosing who you work with yourself as Project 30, whether that be actually a client or an agency or a supplier or whoever it might be. Obviously, it very much sounds like their culture goes into probably some of that decision-making process as well. I always think there's a good opportunity with these things to shine a light on somebody or an organization or an individual or something like that. It could even be a freelancer or a larger organization that, people don't necessarily know that they have that culture because they haven't had the opportunity to work with them, or they might even dismiss them, because it's very hard to understand what an organization or an individual does and how they operate based on a website and, some marketing copy and things like that. Is there anybody that jumps to mind that you think is just one of those organizations or individuals that's got a really good, positive, forward-thinking culture about them?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Nowie, and I declare an interest as I sit on the kind of a board of advisors. But I think those organisations are doing great thing. I'm lucky to sit as a director of the Events Industry Forum as well. So the people who publish the Purple Guide, and I think we've got some work to do that is happening in terms of modernisation and reflecting the kind of the industries that form part of our organisation. But there are a huge amount of people that work behind the scenes for the betterment of the sector in a way that I probably just isn't kind of realised and acknowledged. So some of those people have been doing it for 30 and 40 years. Some of those people have been doing it for 5 years, and I think it's really important that we listen to both. Like as a business, I think we try and work with people that we want to work with, that we like working with, that and I think sometimes it can be like decision making as pure and as basic as that. And like, I'm not going to lie, there's a couple of shows that I've worked on in the 2 years that I've worked on Project 30 that I didn't enjoy and didn't like the approach that they took to dealing with their people. But also as a small business, you sometimes have to say yes to explore these things, but we don't work with them anymore. So like, I think you can only be like, anyone who says that they're always getting it right or always like pulling in one particular direction probably isn't being entirely truthful, because our sector, and like any business, any small business, is about survival for the first few years. And actually, as you scale, like, I'm not sure if it becomes more or less about survival because you have more people to pay wages of and develop and grow. So like, I think you just have to do your best. And I think sometimes that slips a little bit or goes slightly in the wrong direction. And as long as you learn from it and aren't too hard on yourself and take that as a future direction, I think that's okay as well. Like, anyone who sits there going, oh, it's been plain sailing right from the start all the way through is just not being truthful, I don't think. And I think we need to be honest. And I listen to quite a few podcasts, and authenticity is the currency of today. Like, people who are authentically themselves and just to be the organization and be the individuals that they want to be. So we try and work with them wherever we can, and we try and be that organization for people, and with partners that we work with. So yeah, I mean, there are loads of people out there doing great things for our sector. I think they could probably actually work a little bit closer together. I think, if anything, there's probably a few too many, and actually by consolidating some of them into fewer groups with bigger bang for their buck, actually, I think would be a good thing to look at. But it's whether we can achieve that whilst trying to build a business at the same time.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because this is something that, not publicly on the record, but I've had some conversations with myself about, is, in one sense, you know, I understand the way that events work and communities work, and, you know, they do naturally niche down, right? You know, we talk about ourselves as an events industry, but let's be honest with it, there's multiple pillars and verticals within that. Then there's multiple sides to that, from organizer side, agency side, supplier side. There's festivals, there's trade shows, there's corporate events, there's associations. And then there are naturally, you know, the communities that come in and around that, whether they are professionalized and they are classed as associations, because as far as I'm concerned, that's a professionalized community, or they're more independent-led communities, more charity-based or non-profit-based and things like that, which could be NAWI or others, women in exhibitions. You know, it feels to me, though, that we are getting to a point where we are actually putting so much effort into all of these things that collectively we're missing the mark. And I think, you know, back to your point about COVID, that was the very, very apparent thing for me, is that for a period of time through COVID, everybody was just off doing their own thing, and we weren't working collectively and cohesively together as an events industry to get the voice that we needed to at government level. Now, that did change over time, and some specific individuals and organizations did some fantastic work to kind of get to that point where we had the ears of people that needed to hear our voice. Maybe that was also around the parties that we were referring. I don't know. Maybe they were or not. But it seems to me that this is continuing to compound. I'm seeing new things pop up all the time. I'm getting invited to be parts of new communities and memberships. And actually, for me, in my role, it's getting a little bit overwhelming, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. This is probably more of a monologue statement rather than a question to you, Craig. And I want to be involved. I want to help support all of these parts, because as Event Industry News and our events, Event Tech Live, we see ourselves as part of the entire events industry. We want to support and do everything, but we also can't support and do everything. And then it's a case of like, now I feel bad for not being able to support and do everything. It's a real challenge, I think. And I don't know how other event industry professionals go about choosing who they become a member of or a community member of, or join and support as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really valid conversation that needs to be had, and I don't know who are the right people to have it. And I've sat in quite a few of those organisations, and one of the challenges is they're all voluntary. So you're trying to build something and grow something, and then give a load of time to something else. But like, speaking candidly, when we started Project 30, that became loads harder for me to do. When I was in someone else's business in a team of 10, I was more able to do it and support in those areas. And you give what you can, but ultimately sometimes business shouts louder and you have to kind of hop into that. But I think my take on it is that there are too many organizations. Some have done a really good job of kind of cutting across those. So Power of Events is one that springs to mind, and I kind of saw that transform from One Industry, One Voice into what it is today. And it's having, but they purposefully aren't a trade organisation. So then you have like trade organisations and associations, you have adjacent campaigns and campaigning organisations, you have parts representing various different parts of the section. If you look at that and compare it to UK hospitality as an example that speaks on behalf of hospitality as a whole, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are plenty of divisions within that sector that I'm not as acutely aware of because I don't live and operate in it in the same way. But from a government point of view, I've got a hospitality question. Who am I talking to? Like, that I'm not sure that same thing exists in the same way with the events industry. And I say that as someone who's sat in a few of them and sat in a few rooms and tried to shout and vocalize for our sector as a whole. And I'm just, I think, because the nature of our industry is small organizations, small sectors, small parts of sectors, individual differences often can play a part in some of those things. And you're like, oh, that's just kind of moderately frustrating that we all want the same thing, but because of individual differences, we're not therefore pulling forward. And like that's a society thing, right? So we're not going to solve that in the events industry. But I think it is a conversation that is worth having in those upper echelons of these organizations. Is could we achieve more with fewer of us working together? Because my personal opinion is probably A, from a government point of view, but B, from a people in that sector point of view. That's probably a thing. During COVID, we formed the South Coast Events Forum, which was an association, not an association, but a group of sort of 300 plus events professionals organisations across Dorset, Wiltshire and Hampshire. And we did that because we had a bit of an informal group anyway, and we thought we could potentially, by working together, we could better represent what we do in the sector to get funding from local authorities, from national governments, and because everyone had loads of time during COVID, it worked. But very quickly, when everyone fell back into their day to day, it became a community that lives in a WhatsApp group, and that's fine. That's great. That is what it is. But really, could we have done with something bigger, scalable? And sometimes I reflect on that as a bit of as a shame it kind of fell to one side. I go, oh, we could have done a little bit better with that, or if we managed to find some more time to dedicate to it, it could have remained something a bit more formal. But then that wasn't really how it felt like it was going, and it's just kind of fallen away to one side. And with the WhatsApp group side, and that is really well received, and we share contractors and ideas and thoughts and stuff in that group all the time. So maybe that's just all that community needed, and something else is sat in the background. But that's just one example of one part of the country working in. and there was actually another organisation that was more conference focused. We ended up being a bit greenfield focused, and then everyone kind of that worked in indoors goes, oh, you're talking a lot about outdoor fieldies type stuff. Like, and for me, that's almost like a crystallization of the challenge that you have representing the events industry, is that it's so vast. It's interesting. We talk about the events industry. You don't really talk about the marketing industry, and it's like, it's pretty similar, right? It's lots of people in different roles achieving ultimately the same aim and ambition, but not classing themselves as an industry. So I don't know. Like we're probably going to struggle to solve this in an hour, but I think it is like a question that does need to be asked.
Do you know what, mate? I don't think it's here for us to solve us right now. I think it's just one of those things that needs to be discussed. I think if I was to advocate for one thing, and this is more of a, doomsday part 2 kind of scenario of another thing like COVID approaching us, would for me to advocate for the leadership of the communities and associations to have open communication channels, and also spend time themselves coming together to do a bit of show and tell, to learn from each other. And that could be community models, community engagement models, that could be strategies to raise funds for the communities or the associations, because they all need money to operate and things like that. What's fair, what's due, and trust and stuff like that. And it could just be that they all know each other and have each other on WhatsApp and things like that, so that they can collaborate a little bit more effectively. That value will transition across the industry, because they'll be able to then filter that down to their own communities and their own association members and things like that. And God forbid, should a COVID part 2 happen, they can all come together much more quickly and rapidly under a unified voice to have a conversation at leadership. And maybe that is an overarching kind of thing, and it's only the leaders of those that can be the members of those kind of things. But I don't know, that's just an idea, and I'm just spitballing it here. It's not been very well thought out, but it seems to make sense to me.
I mean, I think sorry, I lost my earpod. I think that is happening. I think if we were faced with another situation of that, I think we are better placed to come together quickly to resolve that. I mentioned para events earlier. I think that is a community of lots of different people that can be mobilised. I feel like if I needed to remobilise a South Coast group, you could do it, because it's all sat there. Whether in 10 years' time that will still feel the same, I don't know. I think that's just because it's relatively recently. And there are groups out there, people like Live. I know there is UK Events, which used to be another organisation that rebranded, but there is loads of that sort of stuff happening. It's just, is it, as you said, are they in disaster scenario, are they going to all be able to sit down in a room together and go, this is what we need, and best represent what our sector does to government to get more support? That's ultimately the long and short of it, because there are arguments out there that say whilst COVID was very bad, the national support services and all those sorts of things were great to keep businesses of all types going. But some parts of our sector are facing similar existential challenges at the moment, without really making any cut through, and not seemingly landing the ear of the people that they need to land to make happen. And that's just the reality of lots of that. It's almost broader than events as well, isn't it? Because every sector feels like they deserve more and get less. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And let's remember, on a positive note, that the vastness of the events industry and the diversity of the events industry is actually what makes it so brilliant epic and so unique. That's what I love about it. It's, no 2 days are the same, no 2 events are the same, no 2 events the year after are the same. There's so much variety, and I don't think we actually give ourselves a big enough pat on the back. We're all very British about it and humble about it and stuff like that, but we do so much, and I say this all the time, we are one of the very few industries that touches every and supports every other industry and sector out there. There is literally an event for everything, everything that you can think of, and every new thing that comes along, right? It doesn't take long before, I don't know, the next craze of drinks or kids cartoons or something that comes along, and all of a sudden there's a community and an event and a series of events and things like that around it and stuff. So it's fantastic in that sense.
Yeah, I just really quickly, like I think that's so well said, and I think like in this world of bad news constantly in the media, how many positive hero moments are driven by events, sporting events, cultural events, festivals. Almost the only positive stuff you ever see on in the news is events related, and I think that like the things that lift the morale and positivity of a country or an area or of a community or of an individual are so often linked to events, and I think that's really powerful. And that's why we do what we do, right? Like
Yep.
in a challenging, difficult, complex world that is more difficult than I can ever remember it being. And I'm only 38, but like that's my frame of reference. The things that seem to keep us going and happy are things that bring community together, and those things are events, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, you used the word authenticity. I think
Yeah.
in a world now driven by, can we believe what we see online? Is there truth to it? Is there? I came across a crazy statistic about the number of fake news channels on YouTube spitting out misinformation and things like that. It was astronomical. It was shocking. It seemed like a real problem for YouTube. I think they've got it under the handle now, but it's those kinds of things which I think then reinforce and drive people even further into events, because they want to hear and see from people in the flesh, right? They want to look people in the whites of their eyes, and I think that will drive just so many great things, from commerce and business to relationships to people coming together and being able to truly feel safe in a moment, rather than worried that what they're absorbing or they're engaging with online is nefarious or something like that. People can quite easily get caught up in things online that they didn't realize what it was, and then the next minute they're in trouble and things like that. So I think that's one of the things that people keep asking me about artificial intelligence, and not to talk about artificial intelligence in this, apart from this one thing. But I think that even itself will be a driving force for people to reconnect through events and things like that. So positively, I think our industry will go from strength to strength over the next 5 to 10 years because of all of those factors. People will want to meet in person. People want to connect and things like that. Looking ahead, I guess my final question, or one of my final questions for you, mate, is: are you looking to go global? Where are you operating? Is it just the UK for now? What does international markets look like for you? Is there anywhere on your bucket list that you would love to do an event in?
Yeah, I'd love to say we have a grand 5-year plan of scaling. We're not there yet, and I think like for anyone that's just launched a new business and is in a similar boat, I think that's okay. I think we're in that kind of growth stage at the moment. We're by the end of this year we'll have doubled our workforce from 2 to 4, which feels like a big win and a big achievement for us. And we have big visions of becoming an organisation that is the trusted partner for event owners to deliver their events on their behalf. I think I've seen certainly organisations grow too fast historically, and therefore their standards of delivery drop. And I remember being on the side of the fence where I was running a festival. I would buy into an organisation and buy into the individual running that organisation. Then they would drop out as they scaled, and I felt like the service quality would drop as a result. I really don't want to do that. So I really want to make sure that we grow and scale at a pace that means the people that come in to support us and support Paul and I are able to kind of deliver. With our first hire, Matt, we've absolutely achieved that. He delivered his first show on our behalf in the last couple of weeks and has absolutely nailed it. And it's been an absolute joy and privilege to see him go on that journey. And we want to make sure we spend enough time taking our people on that journey so that our standards don't drop when the people or the individuals change. And that takes a little bit longer. So I think we will continue to grow and scale. I'm constantly inspired by the nature and number of events that bigger operators in our space are doing. I want to get there. But but I'm not. I haven't yet got to the point where we know this is our turnover for this year and this is where we want to get to in year 3 or for year 5. I'm constantly told that I should do, but I'm just we're in that phase at the moment of establishing who we are, establishing the ways in which we work. When I look at the numbers and how they spin up for where we are this year versus last year, it's already kind of taken care of itself. And I want to make sure that the quality of what we offer continues to look after the numbers, and that the values that we talked about right at the start of being authentic to who we are, of delivering great shows, of delivering professional shows, continues to happen and scale. So that's kind of where we are. I'd love to work abroad. I'd love to work in more sporting settings because sport is my passion, Paul's passion, our passion as an organisation. But we have to prove ourselves, and like we have to. Like I came out of my time with Bournemouth Sevens with a credible like experience and back catalogue of work, but I needed more, and we needed to work on more different stuff to with different standards and different expectations, which we've been able to do in the last couple of years. So yeah, that's where we are. I really do believe, and we say in our marketing material, we are just getting started, and we really do feel like we're pushing forwards to create something that learns the lessons of our time, of other people's time, stays true to who we are, and also really importantly works in collaboration with other people. Some of my best projects have been delivered with other production agencies. There is, by nature in business, there's always a bit of a competitive streak if both of you are going after the same work. I think you've got to deal with those things with honesty and authenticity, and accept them for what they are, but maybe continually explore ways to work together, because actually by working together we can achieve a lot more, I think. So that is true to who we are today, and I hope it continues to be true to who we are sort of moving forwards as well.
Same ethos as us, mate. You know, we've got many organizations, competitors if you want, that are also trying to work with the same companies that we work with in media and events and things like that. And I'm proud to say I think we get on with every single one of those organizations. We'll have drinks with every one of those organizations. We'll talk shop with every one of those organizations, because the market's small, right? You know, we are a vast industry, but actually when you look at it and the people that make it tick, it's small. We're going to bump into each other, and like you say, it got to be better to leave the door open to work together politely and cohesively, or even together on an actual project, than kind of keep each other at arm's length, because you just don't want them to encroach in your field, or you should have won that job, or whatever. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. I know I threw some challenging questions at you there. You've done so well over the short period of time that Project 30 has been around, and I'm sure we're going to continue to see you go from strength to strength to strength, and maybe work on some of those international sporting events very soon that you and Paul desire to. But anybody that wants to connect up with you, hell, maybe even they want to pitch themselves to be the next addition to the team, where's the best place for them to connect up with you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for having me. I'm constantly thankful to people like yourself that talk about other parts of the industry, because I think we ride a wave together, and that's delivered by people like you, giving other people the opportunity to big themselves up and talk about that. So, like, thank you sincerely on behalf of myself and everyone else I know that for doing it so politely and kindly and positively. It's really appreciated. In terms of finding out about us, we're project-30.co.uk. You can find us on Instagram and on LinkedIn. I'm not on multi-channel because we're a small team, so we picked the ones that were most relevant to us. I rattle on about my views of the events industry on my personal LinkedIn quite a lot as well, so probably worth finding us there. But yeah, the events industry is about people, so just reach out to us as individuals, and love to chat to whoever wants to come and work with us, for us, or whatever.
Awesome, mate. For anybody that's made it to this point, listening in or watching back, thank you very much for taking your time out of your day. Feel free to share your comments, your feedback, reach out to Craig or myself. And if you yourself think you have a story to share on the Event Industry News podcast, something that's interesting and compelling or thought-provoking, then you can reach out to me at adam@eventindustrynews.com. Craig, thank you once again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the Event Industry News podcast. And I'm sure we'll have you back on a future episode very, very soon.